welcome back. Or if this is your first time here, it's truly an honor to have you with us tonight. How was your day? Busy, quiet, or perhaps a little tangled in thoughts you didn't quite have the time to untie? Whatever it may have been, I invite you now to pause, to breathe, and to gently allow yourself to drift. Tonight, we begin a quiet journey through time, across deserts, mountains, and forgotten empires, to a place where ancient footsteps still echo in the silence, and the wind carries tales wrapped in silk and stars. This is the story of the Silk Road, not just a route of trade, but a living thread that once connected civilizations, exchanged ideas, and carried whispers of faith, beauty, and wisdom across continents. If you find peace in stories like these, and if they help you sleep a little easier at night, I would be truly grateful if you would follow this channel, leave a comment, or simply share how you feel after each story. Every little bit of your support helps me continue weaving more journeys, slow, soothing, and full of meaning. Now, close your eyes if you like. Let the sounds of distant lands guide you, and listen closely, for the Silk Road is waiting with its untold secrets. The night is quiet now. Somewhere far beyond the veil of sleep, a desert breathes, slow, eternal, beneath a canopy of stars. The sands shift gently, not from wind alone, but from memory. It is here, under the moon's soft gaze, that our story begins, not with a battle or a king, but with a path, a thread drawn across the earth like a line of silk left by an unseen hand. Long before the maps of the world were drawn, and before the word Silk Road would ever be spoken, there were only footsteps. Footsteps of merchants and wanderers, of seekers and dreamers, of caravans heavy with salt, gold, jade, paper, and ideas that had no weight at all, only meaning. And somewhere in the heart of the East, where rivers curled like painted dragons and mountains rose like quiet sentinels, the thread was first spun. It started not as a road, but as a relationship. Thousands of years ago, long before the Han Dynasty gave this pathway its purpose, the people of China were already weaving silken cloth, fine and shimmering, like water caught in light. This cloth, coveted and mysterious, made its way westward through the hands of traders who passed it on like a secret. But silk was only the beginning. There were spices, bitter and bright, stones with stories locked inside them, herbs that promised healing, horses swift and powerful from the steppes, dyes the color of fire, and whispers of gods no one in the East had ever named before. Trade was not merely goods, it was trust. Imagine a lone traveler under the endless sky, holding nothing but a few bolts of cloth, hoping to exchange them for food, for shelter, or for something rarer still, the sound of another language, the gesture of goodwill, the smile of a stranger who would not stay a stranger long. It was this, not gold nor conquest, that built the first invisible bridges. The term Silk Road would not exist until thousands of years later, coined by a German geographer in the 19th century. But those who walked its length knew its soul far before it had a name. In the 2nd century BCE, Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty sent a man named Zhang Qian into the unknown lands of the West. Captured twice, traveling for 13 years, Zhang Qian did not find the alliance his emperor sought, but he found something else. He discovered connection. He saw places beyond the borders of China, Bactria, Sogdiana, Parthia, where cultures danced differently but shared a rhythm. When he returned, weary but alive, he brought back more than just knowledge. He brought the possibility of a road. From that moment, the Han opened routes westward. With silk at their back and curiosity ahead, the journey had truly begun. Picture a caravan, its caravan swaying like ships on a sea of dunes. The air is dry and scented with distant frankincense. Each footstep presses into centuries of travel already imprinted beneath the surface. The merchants do not speak loudly. Their voices are for trade, for prayer, and for song when the stars are high. Behind them lie cities like Chang'an, once the beating heart of the Han Empire, its streets busy with scholars, artisans, and diplomats. Ahead are oases, tiny miracles in the desert, like Dunhuang, where caves were carved into stone, filled with paintings of gods and bodhisattvas carried on the breath of Buddhism. These stops along the Silk Road were more than places to rest. They were crossroads of imagination. Here, a Persian might learn of Confucian ideals. A Chinese monk might first hear the chants of Vedic hymns. A Roman coin might pass through 5 hands before reaching the market. The road was long, not just in distance, but in meaning. The Silk Road is often drawn as a single red line on modern maps, but the truth was far more fluid. It was a network, a web, a living thing that shifted with the rains, the wars, the whispers of safety or danger. There were northern routes bending through the steppes and cold winds of Central Asia. There were southern ways crossing burning sands and winding through valleys rich with dates and olives. There were maritime paths too, ships that hugged the coastline of India, Africa, and Arabia, carrying silk not by camel, but by sail. And yet, through all of it, something remained constant: the will to connect. People risked everything for the chance to bridge worlds. Some sought profit, others sought peace, a few sought knowledge, and all, in some way or another, became part of a story larger than themselves. Not all who traveled the Silk Road were merchants. There were pilgrims driven by faith, soldiers sent to protect or conquer, artists inspired by foreign colors and sounds. And there were wanderers, souls with no destination, only direction. They carried with them their dialects, their recipes, their lullabies. They gave and received. They stayed and moved on. And wherever they walked, they left something behind, not always visible, but always felt. The Silk Road was never just a road. It was a whisper passed from heart to heart, a river of breath and footfall, a road not paved with stone, but with stories. And so, as you rest now, drifting gently into slumber, know that you too are walking upon ancient sands. With each breath, you echo the journey of those before you, dreamers, travelers, makers of history. The road continues. The sound of the desert fades now, giving way to something livelier. The murmur of people, the clink of coins, the scent of spiced air, and the shuffle of feet upon old stones. We have arrived at the heart of the road, not in the silence of its sands, but in the beating pulse of its cities, the marketplaces. Across the vast expanse of the Silk Road, cities rose like lanterns in the night, glowing, bustling, alive. Imagine walking through Samarkand as the sun rises over domed rooftops and the call to prayer echoes between tiled minarets. The air is thick with saffron, roasted nuts, the perfume of myrrh. In every direction, voices speak in Persian, Chinese, Sogdian, Arabic, bartering not just goods, but culture. Here, a Roman glassmaker sells his wares beside a monk from India who clutches a scroll. A merchant from the Tang dynasty offers silk dyed the color of plum blossoms to a woman wrapped in a Turkish shawl. Language barriers fall in the face of gesture, smile, coin, and shared humanity. The marketplace was more than a place of trade. It was a theater of the world, where empires touched through cloth and voice, where new ideas slipped between hands as easily as grain between fingers. No maps were needed here, only curiosity. The Silk Road was never ruled by one kingdom. It passed through dozens, some mighty, others modest, each leaving behind a fingerprint upon the trade, the travelers, and the tempo of the road. In the Kushan Empire, nestled between India and Central Asia, Buddhism found its path northward, carved into caves, painted onto walls, carried by pilgrims in humble robes. These monks, traveling from temple to temple, brought stories with them, tales of the Buddha, tales of compassion, rebirth, and peace. They carried no weapons, only wisdom. In the Sasanian Empire, Persian influence surged. Zoroastrian fire temples lit the deserts with sacred flame, while artisans crafted silverware adorned with mythical beasts. Their cities became havens for scholars and translators who bridged east and west through ink and insight. And in the far reaches of the Byzantine Empire, silk itself was so desired that emperors dispatched spies to learn its secrets. They longed to match China's craft, to spin their own dreams into cloth. Every empire saw something different in the Silk Road. A mirror of power, a channel of wealth, a pulse of ideas. Not everything that moved along the road could be touched. Philosophies traveled with the same determination as spices. Art was traded, not with coin, but wonder. Mathematics born in India made its way into Arabic texts, then into the libraries of Moorish Spain. Medical herbs known to Chinese healers were written down by Greek physicians. In Bukhara, scholars recited poetry in the courtyards of madrasas. In Khotan, Buddhist texts were translated into Chinese script. In Merv, astronomers charted stars that no single empire claimed. And every traveler, knowingly or not, became a vessel of this exchange. Even a potter moving west with his wares might carry a song, or a story, or a new way of cooking lentils. A child traveling with her parents might pick up a word in a foreign tongue and keep it close to her forever. Ideas were never taxed. They flowed like wind, subtle, powerful, transformative. By the 7th century, the Silk Road had become more than a thread. It was a tapestry stretching from the Yellow River to the Mediterranean Sea. Goods moved more swiftly. Cities grew taller. Bridges were built not only of stone, but of understanding. Islam began its journey eastward, while Buddhism reached its farthest western frontiers. Paper, once a Chinese secret, began to appear in Baghdad and Cairo, revolutionizing the way people recorded memory. With paper came books. With books, libraries. And with libraries, civilization deepened. Travelers returned home with eyes wide. What they saw abroad changed what they built at home, in language, architecture, and thought. Even today, we see echoes of these journeys. The mandalas of Tibet and the mosaics of Persia. The cinnamon in your tea, which may have first traveled by camel. The words we use, some rooted in Persian, Arabic, Sanskrit, and Chinese. The idea that across the world, someone utterly different from you might not be so different after all. All of this born from roads that were never meant to divide, but to join. In every empire, at every time, the one constant has always been people. Merchants dreaming of wealth, pilgrims dreaming of truth, artists dreaming of beauty, children dreaming of stories. Some never made it to the end of the road, but that didn't matter. The road was never about endings, only movement, exchange, continuity. And so the Silk Road wove itself into the fabric of human history, not with force, but with presence, gentle, steady, persistent. It was a conversation that lasted centuries. Now, as your eyes grow heavy and the sounds of ancient markets fade into the hush of night, let your dreams carry you forward, across torch-lit bazaars, under star-swept skies, and into the next part of this long and quiet journey. The road still stretches onward. The fires in the marketplace have dimmed. Traders have folded their wares. Lanterns have gone out one by one, and the streets that once pulsed with the colors of every corner of the world now rest under the silver hush of night. But the Silk Road, even in darkness, continues to hum, softly, gently, like a thread still vibrating long after the loom has stopped. Its story does not end with goods exchanged or cities remembered. It lives on, quietly, in what it left behind. Some roads vanish when empires fall, but the Silk Road did not vanish. It sank into the foundations of language, into the recipes passed down through grandmothers' hands, into the way temples and churches and mosques all seem to share a common silence inside their walls. Its legacy lies not only in the trade of silk or gold or spices, but in the trade of rhythm, design, flavor, faith. A pattern on a Persian rug reflects a motif first painted in a Chinese cave. A lullaby sung in a Kyrgyz cradle shares cadence with one hummed by a shepherd in Anatolia. A medical herb named in Sanskrit appears in Arabic manuscripts 1,000 miles away. These are not coincidences. These are echoes. And they remain, not in textbooks or grand monuments, but in the most human places, our kitchens, our prayers, our stories. What made the Silk Road endure wasn't its geography, it was its humanity. It was the instinct to reach out, to bridge the unknown, to learn the taste of a fruit that did not grow in your homeland, to hear the music of another people's grief and find something familiar within it. Every hand that offered, every voice that welcomed, every eye that met a stranger's, these were the bricks of the road. And even when the great empires fell, when the Mongols thundered across the plains, when plagues swept through towns, when politics fractured trust, the road did not die. It simply paused, shifted, waited. Because as long as people long for connection, the road cannot truly disappear. Today, we speak of the Silk Road as history, a chapter closed. But if you look closer, with a soft gaze, as one might peer into a desert mirage, you'll see it hasn't gone. Its shape has changed. Its thread now weaves through fiber optic cables, flight paths, and translated words on screens. But the yearning at its heart is still the same. Even now, we sip tea whose leaves once traveled the same mountain passes. We wear garments stitched with patterns born in distant lands. We borrow words, celebrate holidays, and tell stories that passed from caravan to caravan, like torches handed from one traveler to the next. You carry the Silk Road within you, not because you've walked its sands, but because the world you live in was shaped by those who did. And so, dear traveler of stories, as this first chapter draws to its soft close, let us not think of this road as something that lies behind us, but something that still lies ahead, patiently waiting, like an old friend at the edge of a distant horizon. Let it be a reminder that even in a world of distance and difference, connection is always possible. A gesture, a word, a song, these are the threads. In the coming chapters, we'll walk deeper into this tapestry, through forgotten cities, abandoned temples, and the echoes of empires that now sleep beneath dust and stars. We'll meet the people who left no names, yet shaped the world with every quiet step. And now, rest. Let the Silk Road stretch behind your closed eyes, not as a line on a map, but as a story beneath your dreams. For the journey has only just begun. Today, we speak of the Silk Road as history, a chapter closed. But if you look closer, with a soft gaze, as one might peer into a desert mirage, you'll see it hasn't gone. Its shape has changed. Its thread now weaves through fiber optic cables, flight paths, and translated words on screens. But the yearning at its heart is still the same. Even now, we sip tea whose leaves once traveled the same mountain passes. We wear garments stitched with patterns born in distant lands. We borrow words, celebrate holidays, and tell stories that passed from caravan to caravan, like torches handed from one traveler to the next. You carry the Silk Road within you, not because you've walked its sands, but because the world you live in was shaped by those who did. And so, dear traveler of stories, as this first chapter draws to its soft close, let us not think of this road as something that lies behind us, but something that still lies ahead, patiently waiting, like an old friend at the edge of a distant horizon. Let it be a reminder that even in a world of distance and difference, connection is always possible. A gesture, a word, a song, these are the threads. In the coming chapters, we'll walk deeper into this tapestry, through forgotten cities, abandoned temples, and the echoes of empires that now sleep beneath dust and stars. We'll meet the people who left no names, yet shaped the world with every quiet step. And now, rest. Let the Silk Road stretch behind your closed eyes, not as a line on a map, but as a story beneath your dreams. for the journey has only just begun. Hello again, gentle traveler. I'm so glad to see you've returned for the next step in our journey. How are you feeling tonight? Has the day been kind to you? Now, as the world outside your window begins to soften and settle, this is your time. Time to let go of worry, of clocks, of the weight of today. Here, under the quiet gaze of distant stars, you and I return once more to the Silk Road. But tonight, we do not walk its surface. We dig deeper, beneath the dust of time, through the forgotten echoes of voices once vibrant and alive. There were cities once, you see, mighty and proud, whose gates welcomed traders and poets, whose towers kissed the wind, whose marketplaces rang with 1,000 tongues. And now they lie silent, half buried, crumbled, vanished from the maps. But not from memory. Tonight, we will walk among these ghostly giants. We will explore the once golden cities of Merv, Nia, and Lulan, where palaces rose beside canals and where kings once dreamed beneath domes of turquoise and gold. We'll wander through ruins shaped by wind, cracked by centuries, but still humming with something ancient, a story not quite gone. We'll trace the lives of those who lived in these places. The sandaled diplomat sent from Chang'an to Parthia, the weaver's daughter who embroidered wishes into every silken fold, the forgotten queen whose name is carved only in fragments now, yet whose influence stretched like dawn across empires. And as always, we'll listen, not just with our ears, but with the quiet places inside us. Because sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones barely heard. The whispers in the stones, the breath of wind over broken walls, the rhythm of silence between the memories. So, if your heart is ready and your eyes grow gentle, let's begin. Let's return to the places where time sleeps lightly, to the hidden ruins and the silent streets, where the empires of the Silk Road still linger like a fading song. Close your eyes now, and let us descend into the past. There are cities that grow old with grace, and there are cities that disappear. Some vanish beneath forests. Others are swallowed by rivers, mountains, or war. But on the Silk Road, the greatest vanishing act belonged to the desert. It did not erase with fire. It erased with silence. And yet, if you listen now, in this quiet moment of the night, you may still hear the breathing of those ancient cities, not through sound, but through presence, through the haunting stillness of stone, of walls half sunk into sand. Let us visit them now, slowly, gently, as if stepping into a dream that almost faded, but never quite did. We begin in the great open steppe of Central Asia, where the wind curls like smoke and the land seems to stretch forever. There, on the edge of the Karakum Desert, lies what remains of Merv. Merv was once called the mother of cities. Its walls spanned centuries. It rose and fell and rose again, first as an Achaemenid outpost, then as a jewel of the Parthians, later the Sassanids, the Arabs, and the Seljuks. Each empire layered its own voice upon the bricks, and when the sun set over Merv's domes, it glowed in many tongues. The 12th century saw it at its height, a capital of science, art, and faith. Scholars walked its gardens. Poets read by candlelight in libraries brimming with manuscripts. And at dawn, the call to prayer echoed through courtyards where silk from China brushed the boots of Persian emissaries. But in 1221, the silence came. The Mongols arrived. They did not come to trade. They left the city in ashes. More than 500,000 people, gone in a handful of days. And yet, the dust did not claim it all. Today, the outlines of Merv still whisper. You can see where the walls once stood, where markets rang, where towers cast shade. The desert remembers. It never forgets. It simply waits for those who know how to look and listen. Now, let us travel east toward the Taklamakan Desert in western China. Its name means the place of no return. A desert so vast, so dry, that caravans sometimes vanished without a trace. But not all was barren. Nestled at its edge once stood Nia, a green jewel along a river, long dried now, where reeds once swayed and fruit trees grew in the courtyards of wooden homes. 2,000 years ago, Nia flourished. It was a small kingdom, part of the greater kingdom of Kraina, once allied with Chinese emperors, once free, once alive with motion. Wooden tablets recovered from the sands tell us of life here. A man divorcing his wife for growing old. A family dispute over wool. A decree to send grain to a temple. So ordinary and so human. In those tablets, we see ourselves. But as the Silk Road shifted and the river that fed Nia dried up, the people left. Not all at once, but gradually, like candles going out one by one. And when archaeologists uncovered Nia in the 20th century, they found walls still standing, shoes still by the door, combs left on shelves, as though someone meant to return. They never did. But in dreams, perhaps they do. Even deeper into the desert we go, to a city once laced with canals, near the now vanished Lop Nur Lake, Lulan. At its height, Lulan was a gateway, halfway between east and west. It was built by people who learned how to tame the desert. They dug canals, made bricks from the earth, and built watchtowers to guide caravans across the barren plain. The Chinese Han Dynasty kept close ties with Lulan. So did the nomads of the steppe. Everyone wanted Lulan's favor, until they no longer did. One day, Lulan was thriving. The next, it was gone. Some say a political betrayal led to its collapse. Others blame environmental change. But whatever the cause, its people fled in silence, leaving behind a city untouched, still standing in the sand, but with no heartbeat. One of the most haunting discoveries was the Lulan Beauty, a woman buried more than 3,800 years ago, with hair still intact, eyes still closed, skin perfectly preserved by the dry winds. She looked not like a relic, but like someone merely asleep. In her stillness, she became the symbol of Lulan, beautiful, silent, forgotten. And now, remembered again. As the wind moves across these ancient sites, it does not mourn. It simply moves. History, too, moves, not always forward, but inward. The cities of Merv, Nia, and Lulan may lie in ruins now, but their stories remain, in books, in artifacts, and in the silent language of time. They remind us that greatness is not only found in what lasts, but in what leaves behind echoes. And tonight, as you lie still beneath your own roof, know this. The cities time forgot have not forgotten you. Their silence reaches across the centuries, not to call you back, but to remind you that the past is not gone. It merely rests, waiting to be remembered. Close your eyes now and imagine walking their quiet streets, your footsteps the only sound. What do you hear in the silence? What story finds you there? Not all ruins are broken. Some are merely resting. And if you sit beside them long enough, in silence, in wonder, you may hear their old songs begin again, not in words, but in form, in shape, in the graceful arc of a dome reaching toward the heavens. The architecture of the Silk Road was never just about shelter. It was about meaning. Every curve was a prayer, every stone a story. And now, though dust clings to them like old memories, the wonders remain, waiting for someone like you to notice. Let us go now, gently, slowly, through the crumbled halls of forgotten brilliance. In the heart of what was once Seljuk Merv, a mausoleum still stands. Its turquoise tiles are cracked, faded. Some have fallen, but enough remain to form a celestial map. Stars and petals swirling above a tomb now empty of names. This dome was once part of a greater complex. Palaces, mosques, gardens, and libraries where scholars once debated beneath moonlight. It is said that this particular mausoleum was designed not just as a place for the dead, but as a mirror of the sky, to remind those below that the heavens above and the earth beneath were made of the same divine symmetry. And so, even now, when you stand beneath its fractured arch and look up, you may feel something ancient and vast stirring within you, as though the stars themselves once leaned in to listen. Far to the east, among the remains of Nia, archaeologists uncovered something unusual. Pillars, carved from wood, still upright, still strong. Buried for centuries under layers of sand and silence, they rose again, not by magic, but by the stillness of time. These pillars were not grand. They held up homes. They framed family courtyards. They bore the marks of daily life, smoke from cooking fires, scratches from children's games, ribbons tied for blessing. Yet, in their modesty, they speak volumes. They tell us that beauty is not always loud, that resilience is sometimes carved in silence. And in their grain, still visible beneath the dust, we read the touch of hands long gone, shaping, smoothing, building lives in the shelter of love.
Lulan is quiet now. Its canals are dry, its streets erased by shifting dunes. But scattered across the desert, rising like bones from the earth, are the remains of watchtowers. Once, these towers guided travelers across treacherous paths. Flames were lit atop them at night, fire speaking to fire, signaling safe passage or warning of danger. Some were built with mud brick, others with reeds and sand hardened by wind. Many have crumbled, but a few still stand, tilted, weathered, yet unbroken. They are not just ruins. They are witnesses. They watched as empires rose and fell. They stood through storms, invasions, and abandonment. And now they keep watch still, over nothing but horizon, sky, and memory. To see them is to be reminded that even when forgotten, some things do not fall. Across the Silk Road, architecture was more than engineering. It was devotion. A single arch in Samarkand held sacred geometry. A minaret in Bukhara whispered the Quran into the wind. A Buddhist stupa in the Gobi Desert pointed travelers toward both spiritual and earthly direction. These structures transcended culture and creed. They were built by Muslim hands, Buddhist monks, Zoroastrian priests, and craftsmen whose names we may never know. And yet, they shared something. A belief that form can carry faith, that stone can speak, that space can hold memory. When you walk among them, or even just imagine them now as you lie resting, you feel their truth, that even in ruin, beauty remains. Time does not destroy all at once. A wall does not fall in a day. A city does not disappear in a single breath. Collapse is often a whisper, not a scream. And so it is with the architecture of the Silk Road. You will not find these wonders in the perfect preservation of museums. You'll find them in broken outlines, half-fallen ceilings, steps leading nowhere, and yet still standing proud in their imperfection. Because what matters is not that they endured unbroken, but that they existed at all. That they were dreamed, built, used, loved, and remembered. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine yourself walking through one of these cities. The moon above, soft wind brushing your skin, your fingers trailing along an old wall, still warm from the sun. Can you feel it? That quiet reverence, that sacred silence. It's the sound of something ancient, still holding you close.
There are empires that live on through grand statues, preserved libraries, and names carved into marble. And there are empires that live only through silence, in broken tablets, crumbled walls, and the soft breath of desert wind over stone. But make no mistake, they lived, they breathed, they ruled, they dreamed. And though their names may no longer echo through crowded halls, they still call to us, gently, like a voice in twilight. Let us lean in now to listen to the secrets they left behind. Far to the west of Dunhuang, in the vast embrace of the Taklamakan Desert, once stood the kingdom of Croraina, known to the Chinese as Lulan. This was no mighty empire in the sense of armies and monuments. Croraina's power came from something quieter, location. Nestled between competing giants, the Han dynasty to the east and nomadic tribes to the west, Croraina thrived as a link, a bridge, a voice of diplomacy in a world of conflict. It kept records, many records, on thin wooden slips bound with string. These slips were unearthed centuries later from the sands, each one a whisper of governance. A marriage dispute, a request for wine, a letter from a commander pleading for more soldiers. Simple details, and yet, together, they sketch a kingdom alive with rules, relationships, and fragile order. But what destroyed Croraina? Some say shifting alliances. Some say the drying of rivers. Others speak of betrayal, assassinations plotted under desert moons. We may never know, but the paper remains, and in those faded strokes of ink we find a people who once stood between empires, and for a time mattered more than either. Across Central Asia, winding through Samarkand and Bukhara, lived the Sogdians, a people often left out of textbooks, but essential to the beating heart of the Silk Road. They were traders, linguists, diplomats, masters of adaptation. You could find Sogdian scripts in Chinese courts, Persian scrolls, Indian carvings, and Buddhist murals. But the Sogdians were more than messengers. They were translators of worlds. They carried silk and glass, but also ideas, religions, music, fashion. In every caravan, they slipped between languages like dancers, turning commerce into culture. One of their greatest cities, Panjakent, is now only ruins. But on its walls, archaeologists found paintings of musicians, gods, feasts, and flying horses. Scenes not just of trade, but of joy. When the Arab conquests came, much of Sogdian identity faded. Their cities fell silent. Their language retreated. And yet, the spirit of cultural fusion they championed still echoes in every borderless idea today. We return, just for a moment, to Merv. Did you know it was once the capital of the Islamic world? For a brief moment in the 12th century, under the Seljuk Empire, Merv stood not only as a city of trade, but as the center of the world. Philosophers, engineers, astronomers, and poets all gathered in its libraries. Maps were drawn here, medicine refined, laws debated. The caliphs may have sat in Baghdad or Cairo, but their minds often looked eastward, toward Merv. So why did it fall? The reasons, as always, are layered. Internal fractures, shifting sands of power, and then the Mongols. The destruction of Merv was so complete, so sudden, that its memory dimmed with astonishing speed. But beneath its layers lie clues. Ceramics with complex glazing techniques, irrigation systems centuries ahead of their time, and poetry scratched into stone, still legible in the morning light. Merv, like all empires, teaches us this, that greatness often shines brightest just before the dusk. These were not the Romans, the Persians, or the Han, whose legacies fill entire shelves. These were the empires of the in-between, small kingdoms, brief dynasties, quiet powers. But that does not make them any less real. In their forgotten capitals, we find the truth that history often ignores, that the world is shaped not only by conquerors, but by weavers, scribes, diplomats, farmers, and dreamers, those who held together the seams of civilizations with patience and grace. Tonight, as you lie beneath your own roof, know this: empires rise and fall not only in stone, but in memory. And every time you wonder about them, every time you imagine their streets, their voices, their struggles, you give them a second breath. And so, the secrets of forgotten empires are never truly lost. They are simply waiting, gently, patiently, for someone like you. Close your eyes now and picture yourself standing on a wind-swept plain, the ruins of a lost capital behind you, the stars above unchanged. You are part of their story now. History often forgets the ordinary. We remember kings and conquerors, chart empires on maps, and marvel at ancient monuments. But what of the cobbler who repaired boots for weary travelers? The young girl who drew lotus flowers on pottery shards? The shepherd who watched the stars from a crumbling rooftop? They too lived. They too made history, not with banners or battles, but with quiet, steady lives. Tonight, let's sit among the shadows of fallen walls and listen to the echoes of everyday souls who once called these ruins home. The ruins of Jiaohe,
A city carved directly into a plateau of earth and stone remained dry and silent. But long ago, the air here buzzed with sound. The thump of loom pedals, the murmur of spindle wheels, the hum of thread becoming cloth. In a narrow room open to the sky, a weaver sat cross-legged at her loom. She wove not only silk and hemp, but stories. Her hands followed rhythms passed down from mother to daughter. She chose colors like a painter, saffron from wild herbs, indigo crushed in bowls of bone. And on market days, her cloths were worn by merchants, monks, and messengers. She never traveled the Silk Road herself, but her work did. A length of her fabric was once found in a merchant's bundle as far west as Palmyra, its edges still bearing the faint scent of desert spice. No one remembers her name, but her threads remain, fragile but unbroken. In the half-buried town of Dandan Uilik, among the dry mulberry roots and crumbled walls, archaeologists discovered fragments of clay vessels. Painted, shaped, kiln-fired. Some were glazed with lapis pigment. Others bore simple, delicate fingerprints, a child's smudge perhaps. These belonged to a potter's family. They lived in a low home, half dug into the earth to shield against heat. Their kiln glowed through the night like a desert star, fed by camel dung and twigs. They made bowls for dates, flasks for water, jars for tea leaves carried from China. Each item was made with care, though it would soon be traded, used, chipped, or broken. This was the rhythm of their days. Gather clay, knead, shape, fire, sell, repeat. A quiet, sacred repetition, as enduring and as forgotten as the town itself.
Let us return to Merv, not as a capital of scholars and kings, but as a place of childhood. Imagine a boy, no older than 10, climbing the low edge of the outer wall at dusk. The call to prayer has ended. Shadows stretch long. His mother is preparing lentils in a clay pot, humming an old melody passed from her mother. But the boy doesn't listen. He is watching a caravan arriving in the distance, dust rising behind camels like golden smoke. He wonders where they come from. He wonders what they carry. Dates, pearls, letters and languages he cannot read? He dreams, as children always have, of far-off places and wide open roads. The city will one day fall. The wall will crack and crumble. But tonight, in that fleeting moment of dusk, the boy's gaze is full of wonder. And that, too, is history. Among the ruins of Otrar, once a lively Silk Road hub, remnants of kitchens have been found. Ash pits still darkened by charcoal, bones of goat and lamb roasted over stone hearths, spoons carved from tamarisk wood, even ceramic toys, tiny clay lions, dropped near eating areas. Historians call them household remains. But what they truly are moments. Moments where a grandmother offered warm stew to her tired son, where friends laughed and drank fermented mare's milk, where someone, perhaps, fell in love over a shared meal beside a flickering fire. Otrar's libraries burned, its fortress collapsed, but the tenderness of a meal, the feeling of fullness, of safety, lingers, soft as smoke on the air. We will never know most of their names. We will never hear their voices as they truly sounded. But we can feel them, in ruins warmed by sunset, in pottery unearthed by careful hands, in footprints fossilized in the silt of long-dead rivers.
They were like us. They worried over their children. They sang to pass the time. They stitched sandals. They told stories. They lived. And in doing so, they filled the Silk Road not just with goods, but with grace. Let yourself imagine. You are sitting near a low fire in a clay courtyard. A woman hands you warm bread, its crust sweet with honey. A dog sleeps nearby. Overhead, stars flicker in the same sky that once guided ancient caravans. There are no maps here, no kings, only people, living, loving, vanishing. And you remembering. There are roads built for conquest, paved with iron and blood. And there are roads built for whispers, lined not with stone, but with stories. The Silk Road was not just a trade route. It was a bridge of thought, a river of dreams, a living tapestry of cultures weaving into one another without ever fully blending, each thread retaining its color, its texture, and yet, together, becoming something far more beautiful. From Xi'an to Antioch, from Kashgar to Constantinople, not only silk, jade, spices, and porcelain were carried, but also philosophies carved into palm leaf manuscripts, melodies sung across languages, beliefs etched into cave walls, tales whispered beside desert fires. Let us now walk slowly, not through the marketplace, but through the meeting places of minds. Let us feel how, across deserts and mountains, across borders and belief, people met not to dominate, but to share. For in the silence of old cities, you will find not only broken stones, but echoes of laughter in many tongues. There is a kind of traveler more powerful than the strongest caravan guard, more enduring than even the silk threads that gave the road its name. This traveler carries no sword, sits quietly beside the fire, and speaks softly in many tongues. They carry scrolls and questions, and they leave behind not coins, but understanding. Let us follow them now, these quiet emissaries of thought, as they journey along the Silk Road, not to trade goods, but to share knowledge. Long before printing presses, words had to be copied by hand, each letter a small act of devotion, each page a bridge across time. In the caves of Dunhuang, monks from China, India, and Central Asia sat cross-legged in lantern light, translating Buddhist sutras into languages the next traveler might understand. Their ink was made from soot and sap. Their brushes wore down to soft stumps, and yet they wrote, patiently, reverently. Some scrolls were in Sanskrit, others in Tibetan, Uyghur, or Chinese. But the ideas within them, impermanence, compassion, the search for truth, flowed beyond any one tongue. One such monk, known only by the name Ji, translated an Indian text on the Eightfold Path. He had never seen the Ganges, never heard Sanskrit as it was spoken. And yet his translation was so delicate, so thoughtful, that even now scholars find poetry in his choices. His scrolls were found 1,000 years later, sealed in a cave for safekeeping. They carried no gold, only wisdom. Along the Silk Road, wary travelers would stop at caravanserais, inns of stone and open sky, scattered like stepping stones across desert and plain. By day, these were places to feed camels,
to mend shoes, to sip goat's milk. But by night, they became universities of the moonlight. In one such inn near Bukhara, a Persian doctor shared herbal cures with a Chinese apothecary. In another, a Jewish merchant explained weights and measures to a Sogdian metalsmith. A traveler from Samarkand sang verses from Avicenna's canon of medicine to an eager young boy from Khotan who had never heard the word anatomy before. They spoke in broken phrases, drew diagrams on dusty floors, gestured with hands, laughed through misunderstanding. And somehow, ideas moved. Not through war, not through conquest, but through kindness, patience, and curiosity.
In the high plateaus of Central Asia, where the night sky burns cold and bright, knowledge of the stars was more than poetry, it was survival. Astronomers from Persia carried star charts. Chinese skywatchers shared techniques for predicting eclipses. Nomadic shepherds spoke of celestial herds, navigating not with compass, but with constellations. In the oasis town of Gaochang, astronomers from multiple cultures met to compare notes. They agreed on little, debated much, but together they refined maps that would one day guide not only merchants, but empires. These collaborations laid the groundwork for navigation, agriculture, even architecture. And the stars, which once belonged to tribes and temples, began to belong to everyone. Zero. It is a simple idea, a placeholder, a concept of absence. But it was once a revolution. Indian mathematicians developed it. Arabic scholars refined and spread it. Chinese engineers applied it. And through the Silk Road, this humble symbol traveled, until it quietly transformed the world. In Kashgar, a trader taught his son to calculate using a decimal system brought from India. In Balkh, a merchant accountant began recording prices with numerals that needed no abacus. By the time zero reached Europe, it had crossed deserts, mountains, and centuries. It had changed not just math, but thinking itself. We rarely remember the names of those who spread ideas. Not the farmer who shared a planting method. Not the midwife who spoke of herbs from the mountains. Not the teacher who translated one line, one time, for a traveler who would never forget it. But their impact was real. And it remains. In the curvature of domes, in the flow of music, in the methods still taught in schools today. Knowledge did not travel alone. It traveled with hope. The hope that in sharing what we know, we become more than we were. Let your mind drift now to a small candlelit room. A scholar copies a text by hand, his breath slow, the ink drying in cold air. Outside, camels sleep beneath a blanket of stars. In the next room, a traveler hums a lullaby in a forgotten tongue. And far away, in a city you have never seen, someone you will never meet, will one day read those words and feel connected, just as you are now, to them.
Some exchanges leave ledgers, others leave legends. While silk and spices may have filled the ledgers, it was faith, song, and brushstroke that filled the soul of the Silk Road. In temple and mosque, in cave shrine and palace mural, cultures did not clash. They conversed, quietly, colorfully, lastingly. Let us now step into those sacred spaces, not to worship, but to witness. In the silent desert near the old oasis of Miran, archaeologists uncovered a forgotten Buddhist temple. Its walls were crumbling, but still adorned with vivid murals. There were Buddhas with Indian features, bodhisattvas wearing Greek-style togas, haloed figures painted in a style that echoed Roman frescoes, and floral patterns known in Persian art. Who painted them? Likely not one person, but many. Artisans from different lands working side by side, each adding a brushstroke from their own tradition. The temple had no single homeland. It was a meeting place of the sacred. The faces in those paintings gazed out across time, not as strangers, but as family. Even in the driest corners of the Taklamakan Desert, you could sometimes hear the sound of music. The ringing of small bronze bells on a merchant's camel, the pluck of a pipa, the Chinese lute, the deep hum of Persian drums at a celebration, the reed flute of a Turkic shepherd echoing into the dawn. Music crossed language without effort. A caravan from Khotan might teach a rhythm to travelers from the Levant. A Sufi mystic could sing verses in Persian that mirrored the chants of Buddhist monks. And in the bazaars, children danced to songs no one remembered how to write down, but everyone somehow knew. On the Silk Road, melody was the first and last universal language. Along the road, temples stood near mosques. Stupas rose beside synagogues. And in the same marketplace, you might hear Sanskrit, Arabic, Hebrew, and Chinese. Each not just a language, but a prayer. In Samarkand, one could light a candle in a Nestorian church at dawn, hear the call to prayer from a mosque by noon, and walk past a Zoroastrian fire temple by dusk. Did these beliefs conflict? Sometimes, but often they coexisted. Buddhist tales were retold in Persian verse. Muslim scholars quoted Greek philosophy, and Jewish traders wrote blessings in Chinese script on their ledgers. A traveler once wrote in his diary, "I passed through 5 lands today and worshipped in all of them. In each I found kindness." Art was not only in temples. It was in clothing, tents, and textiles. An embroidered silk robe from Chang'an might show cloud motifs shared with Scythian horsemen. A felt rug from the Kyrgyz plains could feature a pattern once seen on Roman shields. A scarf dyed with indigo might carry symbols sacred to both Hindu traders and Taoist sages. Textile art told stories of protection, of passage, of prayer. Mothers stitched wishes into sleeves. Grandmothers wove memories into rugs. And even in silence, the cloth spoke. In the city of Nia, faded wall paintings show dancers caught mid-step, their hands curved in elegant arcs, their garments swirling with color and wind. Some wear Indian anklets, others Greek tunics. Their dance is neither wholly east nor west, but a blend born of borderless rhythm. Dance, like trade, was an act of trust. It invited the watcher to move, to listen, to feel. No translation was needed. In each leap, spin, and gesture, people spoke with their bodies and were understood. It is tempting to see these things, murals, music, fabrics, prayers, as decorative, symbolic, or ancient curiosities. But they were not. They were how people made sense of the world, how a camel driver from Nishapur found comfort in a Uyghur lullaby, how a nun from Dunhuang saw the divine in Persian poetry, how a child in Bactria hummed a melody her great-grandmother learned on the banks of the Yellow River. Art and faith were not separate from life. They were life. And they remind us, though we come from many places, we are all capable of reverence,
all seekers of beauty, all makers of meaning. Imagine walking through a marketplace at sunset. You hear a flute, strange and sweet. You smell incense from a nearby shrine. You pass a booth selling painted scrolls and another with hand-woven scarves. The sky is gold. Someone smiles, though they do not speak your language. And in that moment, you belong. Not to one people, but to every people. Sleep now, knowing you are part of the tapestry. Not all stories are carved in stone or painted in color. Some are whispered in the steam of a teacup, woven into baskets, folded in market cloth, and left behind as footprints in the dust. Let us listen now, not to the voices of kings or saints, but to the quiet, enduring rhythm of the everyday traveler on the Silk Road. The sun rises over the stone walls of a caravanserai. Inside, the courtyard comes alive with gentle motion. Camels stretch their legs, merchants stir from woolen blankets, and the scent of cardamom tea drifts from a clay pot warming by the fire. Children giggle as they chase each other between sleeping bundles of silk. A potter unwraps a new shipment of glazed bowls, each one telling a different tale of origin. Chinese porcelain, Turkic earthenware, Persian blue tiles kissed by desert suns. No one rushes. Time here flows slowly, between trade deals, prayers, and laughter. The world meets in these courtyards, not as empires, but as neighbors. Under the shade of a fig tree near the edge of Bukhara, a family of travelers shares a modest meal with a local shepherd and his children. Rice flavored with saffron and chickpeas, flatbread baked in a dome-shaped clay oven, slices of dried apricot passed from hand to hand. They do not speak the same tongue, but no one needs to. They gesture, they smile, they eat together. And in that meal, simple, warm, and honest, a friendship forms. The shepherd offers a piece of cheese wrapped in cloth. The travelers leave a small wooden flute behind, carved in a distant valley. These are not luxuries. These are the gifts of presence. In the bustling market of Kashgar, smells and colors blend into a soft haze of memory. Spices in burlap sacks, turmeric, cinnamon, cumin. Bundles of dyed wool, rich with the scent of lanolin. Pomegranates split open, their red seeds glittering in the morning light. Copper mirrors catching the sun, polished to reflect not only the face, but the journey etched into it. Here, every item carries a story. A knife with an ivory handle tells of a blacksmith in Samarkand. A pair of embroidered shoes speaks of a Turkmen grandmother's patient stitching. A glass bottle, sealed and pale blue, contains perfume from a recipe whispered across 3 continents. And somewhere, a storyteller sits cross-legged, telling tales of desert storms, lucky coins, and lost caravans. Children gather. Old men nod. Even the merchants pause, drawn by the familiar spell of spoken wonder. When the sun sinks behind the dunes or the mountains, fires flicker in rings. One caravan may carry glass from Syria. Another may bring jade from Khotan. But in the stillness of night, they share the same blanket of stars. A girl sings a lullaby in Sogdian, her little brother drifting to sleep beside stacked bales of wool. Nearby, a man from Anatolia tunes a string instrument. and a woman from the Indus Valley grinds lentils into paste. Someone brews tea. Someone hums. Someone speaks of home, not as a place, but a taste, a scent, a voice. In these moments, the Silk Road becomes less a path of trade and more a path of belonging. Daily life was filled with quiet rituals. A hand pressed to the chest in greeting. A few grains of rice scattered to honor ancestors. A carved bead tied to a child's ankle to keep away misfortune. A pause before sleep to whisper a prayer in a language half forgotten. These gestures traveled with the caravans. Some adapted, some adopted, some transformed. A Buddhist prayer wheel turned by a hand that also wore Islamic talismans. A Taoist amulet found in the pouch of a Nestorian monk. A lullaby sung to the same melody in 4 tongues. People did not always agree, but they listened, borrowed, remembered. And in that quiet remembering, they wove something new. Most lives on the Silk Road were not written down. We do not know the names of the women who packed the bundles, the cooks who stirred millet over open flame, the children who laughed in the alleys of oasis towns. But their stories echo still, in fragments of cloth, in worn sandals, in the smoothed steps of a temple's threshold. They were the weavers of the world, not famous, not forgotten, simply essential. Now close your eyes, dear traveler. Let the echoes of markets, meals, and murmured blessings carry you. Feel the warmth of a shared fire, the softness of a borrowed blanket, the hush of stories told by starlight. You do not need to be from Samarkand or Dunhuang, from Persia or Chang'an, to walk this road. You are already part of it, in your wonder, in your kindness, in your rest. Sleep gently. The journey continues at dawn. There are roads we walk with our feet, and others we carry within us. The Silk Road, long faded from maps and parchments, still lives, in the way spices scent our food, in the script of books that travel across alphabets, in a lullaby sung in one tongue but remembered in another. Come, let us walk softly now through the echoes that remain, visible, invisible. Though the caravans have long vanished into dust, the trails they carved endure. You'll find their legacy in your teacup, green leaves from China brewed in Persian fashion. In your textiles, a paisley motif with origins in Central Asia, now sewn into modern scarves and tunics. In your words, jasmine, bazaar, tambourine, each one a tiny echo of ancient trade routes, whispered into our vocabulary by the wind that carried goods and greetings. Even silence bears the Silk Road's touch, a certain reverence in bowing one's head, a hand gesture passed across cultures that once shared not only wares, but ways of being. In cities like Samarkand, Xi'an, Isfahan, and Venice, walls still remember. Domes curve in Persian blue, traced with verses in Arabic and Sanskrit. Minarets rise where Buddhist stupas once stood. Tiles sing the geometry of distant lands. Step through an arched gateway in Bukhara, and you'll see the fingerprints of every traveler, not just in stone, but in space. Courtyards built for strangers to rest. Doors painted in colors believed to ward off spirits. Fountains placed to remind the soul of stillness. Each corner of these cities is a woven memory of hospitality, of trust, of interconnectedness. Taste is the Silk Road's quietest legacy. From Chinese dumplings to Turkish manti, from Indian chai to Iranian rosewater confections, the mingling of spices, techniques, and ingredients speaks of journeys made by cooks, mothers, and market sellers. Sesame seeds traveled east to west. Chilies moved the opposite direction. Saffron, cinnamon, almonds, these were the first diplomats entering kitchens before borders even existed. A dish passed down in your family might carry more than just flavor. It might carry the footsteps of a spice merchant or the hands of a woman who once fed pilgrims under a tree of shade.
The Silk Road was more than a marketplace. It was a meeting place of belief. Here, a Buddhist monk and a Nestorian Christian might have shared water from the same well. A Muslim trader might have paused beside a Zoroastrian fire temple, not to pray, but to listen. Ideas flowed like silk, graceful, intricate, resilient. The concept of zero traveled west from India. The technique of papermaking reached Europe from China. Manuscripts written by candlelight in one language were translated again and again, so knowledge could live in many tongues. In this way, faiths grew not in opposition, but in proximity. Even today, pilgrims walk old paths in search of silence and story, carrying scriptures, prayers, and questions too ancient to answer. Modern roads now trace the old ones. Trains rumble where camels once knelt. Highways cut through valleys once lined with caravanserai. Governments speak of reviving the Silk Road, calling it the Belt and Road. But the true revival is quieter. In students learning Persian poetry, in musicians blending Mongol throat singing with jazz, in museums that restore not only relics, but memory. In a gallery in Berlin, a young girl touches a silk robe behind glass. In a university in Tashkent, a scholar deciphers Sogdian ink on paper-thin parchment. In a home in Aleppo, a family bakes bread using a recipe that hasn't changed in centuries. And somewhere, a person like you listens to this story, letting it wash over them like an old melody rediscovered. The Silk Road is not just about the goods that moved, but the human spirit that dared to connect, to leave home, to speak to strangers, to trust unfamiliar customs, to walk toward the unknown. It teaches us that no culture is an island, and no distance too vast for kindness to cross. We carry that truth now, in how we greet others, in how we learn, in how we listen. The road may have changed, but the journey continues in us. And now, as the candlelight fades and night stretches across the sky like silk, let your heart rest in this truth. You are not separate from the Silk Road. You are one thread among many, a whisper in a long, unbroken song. Sleep well, traveler. Tomorrow, we follow the footsteps of dreams.
Thank you for walking with me tonight through the ancient winds and whispering sands of the Silk Road. May the stories we've shared of caravans, cultures, and quiet courage linger softly in your dreams, like the gentle rustle of silk beneath a star-lit sky. If this journey has brought you a moment of peace, a flicker of curiosity, or simply the comfort of calm, I invite you to return again tomorrow night. There are still many roads left to wander, and many secrets still waiting to be discovered. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking, subscribing, or leaving a gentle comment below.
every word from you helps this little corner of calm reach more souls in need of rest. Until then, rest well, kind traveler, and may the ancient winds guide you gently into your dreams. Good night.